Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 375, The Angle of a Landscape. This is an amazing little poem. It does so much in so little, as Emily is often wont to do. We are in many ways back to Emily as artist, painting, if you will, not with oils, but with words. We're back to perspective. We're back to perspicacity, that word we've used before from our study of Plato's Republic. Insight, if you will. Emerson, who was very influential on Emily's life, and I think her thinking, and I think this poem, you'll remember said in his essay, The Poet, that when a poet can see the comprehensive, he called it plan, he or she calls it pattern, of nature. And I think in many ways this is exactly the game that Emily is playing. Our hope, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net down that left-hand side chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already been exposed to our set of introductory comments. We mentioned Emerson there. And as well, that you've read the preceding 374 poems. We just finished with 374, I Went to Heaven, so that you can kind of place this poem within the context of the other poems that we've read already, where Emily is trying to, again, show instead of just simply tell. Now, she does want to play with words the way artists play with oils. And so she'll show us what she can see out her bedroom window between the curtain and the wall. A crack is what she will call it. The scholar Wolfe has said about this poem that it is a particularly American stamp, offering the spare existential outline of God's handiwork. I love that as a line, and I think as you read the poem, there's several things happening. Several scholars have pointed out there's actually 3 poems in one as she plays the game of circles. You'll remember that was another name of Emerson's one of Emerson's classic essays. This is how she says it. The angle of a landscape that every time I wake, between my curtain and the wall upon an ample crack, like a Venetian waiting accosts my open eye, is just a bough of apples held slanting in the sky. The pattern of a chimney, the forehead of a hill, sometimes of a van's forefinger, but that's occasional. The seasons shift my picture. Upon my emerald bough I wake to find no emeralds, then diamonds which the snow from polar caskets fetched me. The chimney and the hill and just the steeple's finger, these never stir at all. It's interesting that she finishes with some concept of still. She begins with the dynamism of a landscape. Landscape, of course, immediately makes us think of a Milton Paradise Lost. You'll remember in our lectures as we've given it at learnstrong.net. For the first time, Milton will use this term landscape from the Dutch as he brings it in. And notice, it's all about angles. It's all about the way angles play. That every time I wake, and we're going to have waking up 2 times I wake, and then a little bit later, of course, it will be open eye, right? Between my curtain and the wall, so she's kind of seeing through it, upon an ample crack, there's just this fissure, there's just this opening, and this allows her to be able to see whatever it is that she's describing. And then she uses this interesting simile, like a Venetian. Now, some have seen Othello and Desdemona here. Some have pointed out that Venice is a town, a city that's very crowded, and so the light comes in at different angles, right? Of course, Emily couldn't have known this personally. She never went there. She sort of could have read about it. Notice she says waiting, like a Venetian waiting. And then I think the key word here is accosts, my open eye. Again, we're back to waking up. And it's almost like an attack of a kind is just a bough of apples. Notice capitalized, and immediately we think of apples. We think of Genesis 3, of course, and we think of Milton and the famous apple. But we also think about Keats's To Autumn, held slanting in the sky. Now, slanting, of course, is an important word for Emily. 258, we saw it. 375, tell the truth, but tell it slant. The idea that it's angled, it's slanting in the sky. And then, what is it? It's a pattern. Now, we're back to Emerson's idea of nature. Pattern gets used in 504, 724, 944, 1171, 1223, 1550, and 1670. And each one of those, especially 1670, is fascinating the way the word pattern gets used of a chimney. The forehead of a hill is brilliant, right? The forehead of a hill, sometimes Van's forefinger, but that's occasional. And then the seasons shift, and now there's the shift in the poem as we move now towards fall or autumn. My picture, and we're from pattern to picture, upon my emerald bough I wake to find, notice the uses of the dashes here, no emeralds. Then, so we go from emeralds to diamonds. Diamonds which the snow, when we think about Wallace Stevenson's Sunday Morning with the winter branch, right? Which the snow from polar caskets fetched me. The chimney and the hill In other words, what she's seeing now that all the branches have lost their leaves, right? Now she can see the chimney and the hill, and just the steeple's finger. This would have been the first congregational church that Emily would have attended until she no longer attended it. These dash never stir at all dash. There's in other words, the consistency, the constancy of certain things. What are we saying here at 3a? I think our argument is that everything about nature is cyclical. It's always moving. It's always moving, and in that regards, because it's moving like a top, it appears to be still as well, or as T.S. Eliot will have said it, we must be still and still moving, right? As he says it in Four Quartets. At 2b, I love the key words: accost, slanting, and of course pattern. At 3a, we mentioned Wallace Stevens' Sunday Morning and the Winter Branch. Ruskin's Stones of Venice might have come to mind, and some have said that that's what inspired this poem. As we mentioned, Emerson's classic comment from Nature in chapter 1, he said it this way: Nature, quote, the integrity of impression made by manifold natural objects. And then he went on to suggest that, quote, there is a property in the horizon which no man has but he whose eye can integrate all the parts, that is, the poet. And in many ways, I think, obviously, we can see Emily playing that game here. Finally, at 3b, how have you recognized the cyclical nature of nature? And even your study of Emily itself is cyclical. Thank you.